to a Counter-Strike tournament.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Nice.
Katowice is one of the sort of the big tournaments of the year. I watch it on YouTube.
Do you?
I'm
Oh, I
quite
bet you're
jealous
so
that
jealous.
yeah, they're actually there.
Yeah, look at that. I've never seen Paul so giddy.
He's
He
in
better be
proper
that
geek
giddy
territory there.
in. So yeah, shall we go?
Yeah, let's go.
Hi, Simon.
Hi, Vicky. How you doing?
How are you? Good. How are you?
I got in first. Yeah,
You
not
look
too.
very. I was gonna say you look very opulent in
Thank
your
you.
new
As do you.
background.
Yeah.
Thank you. Look at us
Welcome
with
to
our
our
new
new Velour
background.
studio.
This is who
Yeah.
we are. It's very exciting.
Adds a
Yeah,
whiff of the sort of scholarly, doesn't it?
we try. I think we're like
Yeah.
Diet Coke scholars.
Diet Coke scholars. I was going to say Coke Zero, but yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
Coke Zero scholars.
possibly the Pepsi Max. Yeah.
We have a little bit of an air about it, but deep down we just live a gossip, and that's what we're
Yeah,
doing.
that's it.
So,
Yeah. One day we'll get smoking jackets in these exact fabrics.
yes, please. Yeah, be great.
Marvelous.
So,
Yeah.
welcome to She Changed History. Hello. Simon's got a story for us today.
Yeah, I sure have. I have a story for you about a lady called Elizabeth Garrett Anderson.
Double
Um,
barrel.
Elizabeth Garrett Anderson's life was one of defiance against societal norms and tireless dedication to breaking down barriers for women in medicine and beyond. As the first woman to qualify as a doctor in the United Kingdom, her accomplishments represent a pivotal moment in the history of both the medical profession and the broader women's rights movement. Her career would go on to influence generations of women striving for equality in professions and society. Today we explore the lasting legacy of Elizabeth Garrett Anderson through her role as both a pioneering physician and a trailblazer for women's rights. I have a number of sources, articles from the Royal College of Physicians, a BBC History article, yet more from the Women's History Network,
Whoop, whoop.
um, something from the Suffragette Fellowship, and a little bit of bonus reading on hysterical Victorian women.
Well, yeah. Are we referencing that? Yes,
Yeah.
please. Yes, please. Not historical women, just special.
They are
Yeah.
famously the most hysterical. Yeah.
Great, great. Love, 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 love.
Yeah. Elizabeth was born in Whitechapel in London
Yeah.
on June the 9th, 1836, to quite a
Also, we're
prosperous family.
British.
British, yeah. A prosperous family with a strong emphasis on education. Her father, Newson Garrett, was a successful businessman, and her mother, Louisa Garrett, encouraged her children to be intellectually ambitious. Her early life was, as was the case in Victorian times, not without its challenges, with sort of the expectation of conformity to the traditional roles, so primarily focused on domesticity and marriage.
Okay. So she's
This
like higher society. Yeah,
higher
she's,
society, yeah,
yeah.
not royalty, but they're doing all right for themselves.
Okay, understood.
Um, and this intellectual ambition that her mother instilled in her meant that she had aspirations beyond just marriage and childcare.
Okay.
She harbored a deep interest in the sciences and was drawn to the study of medicine from an early age. So we're in Victorian times, and it's a funny time for medicine because it's not quite the era of leeches and just totally quack theories, although I'm sure many of them were still around. And you've got all these haughty male doctors and a sort of pervasive view of women and women's healthcare at the time.
It was just a
Women,
vast unknown, I imagine.
problem is, like, when they couldn't diagnose something in women, when they thought something was up, but they didn't have a diagnosis for it, they just used the catch-all term of hysteria.
Yeah.
So at the time, we had hysterical women, and I think one of the early theories that it was because of a lack of sex. They were sort of sexually
Oh,
frustrated. So
God.
they had all of
They were
these.
not. I can assure you they were not sexually frustrated.
The
They were
treatment,
doing fine.
they were doing fine. Well, they were if they went to the doctor's surgery, because that's a sort of the reason for the invention of the vibrator. First, the mechanical clockwork one, and then electricity
Hmm.
came along. And yeah, apparently about a quarter of women were diagnosed as being hysterical.
A quarter.
A quarter, yeah,
Wow.
in Victorian England. So it was widely done, but it was part of this idea that women can't control their emotions. They can't focus or concentrate on things. They can't be trusted. They're just largely troublemakers who are controlled by their womb, rather than
Yeah.
just like being people who can do stuff.
Right. So did Elizabeth not believe in hysteria then? Is that the idea that she wanted to dig under that hysteria a bit more?
She was just dissatisfied. I mean, a quarter of
Okay.
women being diagnosed with hysteria, that's not an answer.
Hmm.
That's not a thing. It was such a bizarre diagnosis because it's like anything that was wrong, women that didn't fit into an existing diagnosis would just get labeled as hysteria. And
Oh, I
then
see.
they
So it's
were,
like a default label.
that was the default, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the sort of research and the efforts and the thinking of the time went into trying to explain hysteria, not trying to figure out what might actually be wrong with these people.
Yeah.
If anything. So, like Sigmund Freud came along and suggested quite a lot of things, but he was still just thinking about the idea of hysteria rather
Yeah.
than actual underlying medical conditions. And I wish there was more of a difference today, but I just think about particularly like diagnosis of endometriosis
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
where that gets written off as, oh, you're just exaggerating, oh, toughen up. But, you know, things gradually change.
I was going to bring up Nagaman Chetty's new book,
Oh,
which
yeah,
I
it's out in May,
understand.
isn't it?
Yeah, which is my
Yeah.
understanding that it's about her basically going through what you just said, that
Hmm.
no, I am in a lot of pain. No, I'm not lying.
Yeah.
No, please believe me. And all the different layers to actually getting a full-on diagnosis and
Yeah.
actually, it's seems to be that she's transforming the regulation around that still today.
Mm.
Like it's like not the new hysteria, that's not fair, but it's got its own challenges, hasn't it, Endo? It's got its own
Yeah.
it's its own ballpark. Um so yeah, I can't wait for that to come out.
She's
That
incredible.
picture you've sent me looks like Elizabeth is reading 25% of women are diagnosed with hysteria.
I'm just like, oh my
That's her
God.
immediate reaction.
That's-
I feel like that's what's in the notebook, that statistic.
I'd love to see what's on that page. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
for sure. Yeah.
And the prevailing societal norm at the time just dictated that women were unfit for the medical profession. It was thought that they lacked the intellectual rigor or the emotional temperament required for medical practice.
Sorry, say that again. The what
Uh,
vigor?
the intellectual rigor.
Oh, intellectual rigor. So,
They
okay,
just
because
weren't
they won't
clever enough.
teach them. Yeah, so they won't teach
Um,
them. So you're not
yeah,
clever enough. And what was the other one,
and
sorry?
the emotional temperament.
Yeah,
So they were
okay,
just too
sure.
volatile to be considered a trustworthy medical practitioner. Um,
Yeah, because a man's never lost his temper. I love that. You're right.
exactly.
You're
Yeah,
right.
I know. The rock steady men, Um, but this put up an obstacle for someone such as Elizabeth who wanted to study medicine because she wasn't allowed.
Hmm.
She was determined to become a doctor,
Okay.
uh, and she was intellectually
Capable. Yeah.
capable. Absolutely, she had the capability, the determination to do it, the desire to do it, but she wasn't allowed into any of the traditional medical schools. They were male only places.
Okay.
So there was a lot of issues around this time and up until then of women not being allowed to study for arbitrary reasons. Fortunately, she was from a family who could afford private education for her.
Great.
So she was tutored by her father and other private tutors. They cultivated her interest in a number of subjects, specifically the sciences. She wanted to go this medical route. And then in 1858, she approached the prestigious Society of Apothecaries
Oh,
and wanted to go there to study.
yeah. Is that still a thing today?
Oh, I didn't
Should I
actually look.
Google it?
Yeah.
I want to be part of that. Let me
It's
in.
probably just called the Pharmacists Union these days.
It's called
Oh, it
Worshipful
is.
Society of Apothecaries, livery company for pharmacists and
Wow.
physicians in the City of London. Oh, it looks beautiful. Look at that building. Stunner. And still in London.
That's amazing.
Nice. I love the word apothecary. It's
It's
such
so
a,
good, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
And just the images that it conjures up
that's it.
of
Yeah.
rows and rows of bottles and tinctures and all these things, and the old sort of apothecary furniture as well, all the little storage. So very much the IKEA of their time in terms of organisation.
Yeah, absolutely. They knew they were onto something. They were onto a $1 billion brand and they
Yeah.
didn't know.
So she wasn't allowed to study at the society, but she underwent training studying medicine privately with the help of doctors. There's a renowned physician and surgeon, Dr. William Alexander, who taught her. And a couple of years later, she applied to the Society of Apothecaries to take her qualifying exams.
Yeah,
She was rejected,
of
again,
course.
rejected because of her gender,
Yeah.
just saying that women weren't eligible to enter the medical profession.
Yeah. So it's like a
And
blanket ban across all schools,
blanket
all
ban, yeah,
institutions. Yeah, there is.
yeah,
Yeah.
she was rejected, but eventually she managed to, with the help of friends in high places and allies around her, she managed to arrive at a private medical school, the Middlesex Hospital Medical School in London. So it was making it one of the first institutions to allow women, a woman, to study medicine. She faced a lot of opposition in her time at the school, but her academic brilliance and determination really prevailed. And studying medicine is not a short-term thing. It's not like an hour a week in evening school. This takes years and years, and she would have faced the opposition there from tutors and other students alike,
But she was still allowed in.
but she was allowed in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so someone must have had her back. And I
yeah,
think this is so important with all our stories is that you just need someone to give someone a chance. And if you're in a position right now where you're able to give someone a chance who maybe isn't traditionally meant to be for that opportunity or meant to go down that path, give them just give them an inch and
yeah,
what they can achieve off the bat, because I don't know this story, but I imagine she's going to go and achieve something, is, it's totally worth it. I don't know if this is a British thing or whatever, but just always give the underdog, always give someone who, they've got enough hurdles. Be nice, be the one to give a chance. Because that underpins so many of our stories. There was a supportive dad, there was a supportive doctor, someone let someone on a train and they could go off and do something amazing. Like it's
mm,
always just someone bending the rules ever so slightly will just lead to amazing things, even if they're not the
yeah.
people who quote unquote changed history.
Hmm.
So yes, there you go, soapbox done. Thank you.
Love it.
As you
Yeah,
were.
love it. So in 1865, she passed her exams and gained a certificate that allowed her to become a doctor.
Oh,
Because the exams, I think, had to go through, at the time, had to go through this Society of Apothecaries.
yeah.
Uh, so she got her certificate, enabled her to become a doctor, and the society immediately changed its rules to prevent other women doing the same thing
Oh,
while
God.
studying privately and then taking the
Yeah.
exams.
Because of all that terrible healthcare she was giving immediately.
Oh, just awful. Yeah,
Didn't even give her a chance.
yeah. In 1866, she established a dispensary for women in London
So a
and
dispensary is in like a pharmacy.
a pharmacy, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow. Okay. For women.
for women, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So although,
Specializing in women's health is like, we should have those today because I heard something and obviously it was just through Instagram, so I don't know like how true it is, but we know just as much about the woman's body and the woman's reproductive system as the Tudors did about brains. Does that make
God,
sense? So,
yeah,
and I'm not gonna lie, the Tudors didn't know that much
they weren't
about.
that great at the whole brain surgery thing, were they?
No, they hadn't got it down. So we
I don't
haven't
think they
got
even had
women
MRI
cancer.
scanners back then.
That just shows how little we know about. And you've spoken about this before, haven't you, with
Yeah,
HG and things like that. But yeah, it's fascinating how little we know. So the fact that she was already specializing
it's just
in
so distressing.
1866, yeah. So
Yeah, she had this real commitment to, like, I mean, it stemmed from her interest in the sciences, and she thought, okay, I want to do medicine. But then and I'm speculating now, but I would speculate that the barriers that she came up against And at the time, just the prevalence of this diagnosis of hysteria it's not a satisfactory answer. And if you were hysterical and rich, then you would get sexually assaulted by the doctor, and if you were hysterical and poor, you would get sent off to a mental asylum.
Please.
And like, it's not really an adequate answer.
I think we can do better,
I
society.
think we can
Yeah.
do better, yeah. So she had this real commitment to offering women access to medical care, both as patients, but also as practitioners. She was qualified, but wasn't really recognised because she was a woman.
Hmm.
So yeah, opened up her own dispensary in 1866,
Yep.
um, and was made a visiting physician at something called the
Nice.
East London Hospital. She gained a medical degree from the University of Paris,
Oh, so
just as a
this all
little,
sounds like she's got so much money to fund these things because funding a pharmacy, a dispensary, not cheap. Going to
yeah,
Paris, not cheap.
not cheap. Yeah,
Yeah, so it
yeah.
sounds like she's
So
got the means to make waves.
this is, yeah, one of the stories of someone capitalizing on their privilege,
Yeah,
to improve things for everyone
love
else.
it. Yeah.
Um, so she got a medical degree from the University of Paris, but the British Medical Register refused to recognise her qualification. So she sort of tried a few different routes to entry now,
Yeah.
and generally been shot down, but
But
didn't let that
persevering.
stop
Yeah.
her. She, in 1872, founded the New Hospital for Women.
New hospital for women. Love
Yeah,
all those words.
which
Okay.
is,
What does that mean?
it very much does what it says on the sign above the door. It was a new
Great.
hospital, and it was specifically for women. It has
Okay.
since been renamed. It's now known as the Elizabeth Garrett Anderson Hospital.
Sexy name.
It's
Like it.
right.
Is that in London?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And its primary purpose that she set it up for was advancing women's healthcare. It was
Yes.
one of the first institutions in the UK dedicated to providing medical care for women by women,
No.
addressing the specific and the particular health needs of women and children. She led the hospital, and although she wasn't accepted with her medical degree from Paris and having passed the exams and got her certificate that they then changed the rules on, etc., this was still a sort of a trailblazer moment of
It's a
proving that actually a woman could do it, and she was setting up the dispensary and she set up the hospital.
it's a
So
killer
it's,
move, isn't it? It's a
yeah,
killer. So many thoughts. So you'd have to get the building, set up the building, publicize it, let people know that it's there, get people in get women into a position where they were allowed to go. So
hmm,
you're not just convincing women at this point, are you? You're convincing their finances and you're convincing
yeah,
them that it's safe on top of
hmm,
everything else. So much around the Victorian healthcare is not safe.
yeah,
And so she's leading all those different rivers.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
against the societal backdrop where there would still have been a lot of opposition to even the concept of it.
yeah,
Things don't change that quickly, so she was sort of battling against that
that's amazing.
all the time.
Yeah.
And it really showcased her ability to combine. She's got combining both the intellectual, both her medical expertise, and this determination for social reform
Yes.
together in one large project.
Yeah, which is not
And
easy. Like that's not
no,
easy today, let alone back then.
it's
And
something that comes up with so many of our subjects that, like, a lot of people have skill in a particular area, but the ones that we discuss, the women that we discuss who seem to have the biggest impact and make the most change, are able to combine these maybe slightly disparate sounding skills of both
mm,
being intellectually rigorous and having this drive and determination and almost sort of political skill to maneuver around the leadership of the time.
or they pull on people who have that. So
Yeah.
like with the champagne story with
Oh, yeah.
Nicole, she was pulling on people who had expertise in other fields. And
Yeah.
I think being able to influence
Definitely.
so many different people,
Yeah.
just like with its orogeny, she was being at the table arguing with so many different standpoints
Yeah.
about we need independent.
And I think
Yeah.
there's something as well about having, if you have a determination and a passion for a cause, if that's apparent, it does seem to draw people in. It draws people
Yeah,
to you, and they sort of want to, they get caught up in it, and they want to be involved
like this
in this
podcast.
change, like this
Yeah,
podcast.
like this podcast. Come along for the ride.
Let's put ourselves up there.
We just like this.
Uh, it, so the new hospital for women also became a key institution for training up other female doctors. So it was now somewhere that
Passing
if,
that book. Yeah.
yeah, they had established somewhere where actually if you had done the academic side of it, got your certificate, taken your exams, they were then welcoming to you to do your
Nice.
like on the job training. That's such a big part of it.
So she knew it was sexism back then. She,
Oh, she
like,
100% knew it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because you
Um,
don't ever see that word like in articles or in like the world was sexist. You never see that. Like it would be cool to see it in a letter or something. Like this is so freaking sexist. I'm going to do this.
yeah.
But they knew. They did know.
Just
I don't
call it
know.
out, call it for what it is.
It's just
Oh,
it is blatant, isn't it? I
yeah.
think that's what shocks me in all these things. It's not undercurrent. It is in your face, blatant. You
Hmm.
can't be a doctor. Yeah.
Purely because you're a woman.
Yeah, for sure.
She wasn't necessarily that famous at the time. I mean, I
Hmm.
think she started off pretty wealthy and that continued, but she wasn't in it for the fame of it. Her drive was to make a difference. She was focused on improving the lives of women, both through the practice of medicine and improving that for them, and also the advancements of women's rights, both in the medical community and later in society in general. This way that she integrated women into the medical profession was then a model for future generations of doctors who would continue to challenge this institutionalized discrimination in medicine. And it's something that still seems to, I can't say I read a great deal about the medical profession.
Yeah.
I just think of like female surgeons and the sexism that's still around those and the barriers that there are for women getting involved in that. There were some stories a few months ago about the sexism, misogyny, inappropriate behaviour of surgeons towards female members of staff in theatre that still
Ugh,
goes on today.
that's so grim. Yeah.
There's that picture a couple of years ago that I think there was actual uproar about it of a female surgeon who had to continue with the surgery, couldn't pull herself away from the surgery, but she started her period. So the picture was of her having a period in her scrubs. And then there was some massive uproar about that. And it's just like the general seeming lack of accommodation for
Yeah.
women in medicine. And
Yeah.
in particular areas that still exists. And like you say, surgeon, it's that unconscious bias, I suspect, that's still in there with a lot of. There's that test that they often say in team building things or training days of a surgeon and his son are driving in a car
Oh,
and
the
there's a car
riddle.
crash. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
the son goes to the hospital. The surgeon says, I can't operate on him. He's my son. Explain. And like the surgeon's his mum.
Yeah. But you
But
immediately think, oh, he's gay or
he's, yeah,
something. Yeah.
he's incestuous. His grandfather is his
Yeah,
dad.
it must be. Can't possibly be a woman. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that starts from a really young level though, because like as soon as you said women in medicine just then, my first thought that flashed in my mind was Florence Nightingale. And I got images of Mrs. Cobb, who was our primary school teacher, teaching us about Florence Nightingale because that's what we were taught. And
Yeah.
actually, it's so internalized
Yeah.
that thought process. So, and that's me. And we do this podcast, which
Yeah.
is purely about highlighting women in male dominated fields. Um,
Yeah, if it's
so,
internalized for you, then frankly, the rest of us are
yeah,
screwed.
well,
Yeah,
you'd think so, wouldn't you? So, yeah,
yeah,
but I love it. I love that this has been going on forever and that she passed that baton on. Like, she was like, well, come and train with me. I'll
yeah,
teach you. That
yeah.
spread of knowledge is
I
so
will give you
powerful.
this step up, this helping
Yes.
hand, this opportunity.
Love.
Um, she wasn't only a physician, sort of in keeping with her work in the medical field, she was a vocal advocate for women's rights, particularly in relation to women's suffrage.
Yeah, makes
Her
sense.
her advocacy for the right to vote is closely tied to her belief that women should have equal access to opportunities in all spheres of society,
God, it's like she
including
knew what her values were and she
she's
stood by them throughout
and
all time.
stood by them, acted on them, vocalized them, yeah, and showed some consistency.
Consistently. Yeah.
Yeah. And she wasn't having these opinions they weren't like a power play because she wanted to be in charge of something. She just thought that was the right
It
thing
was
and
the
she got
right
on with
thing.
it. Um,
Yes.
yeah, equal opportunities in all spheres of society, including education, employment, and political participation.
Nice. Yeah.
Anderson's involvement in the suffrage movement came at a time where women were still, surprise, largely excluded from political life
Hmm.
and were considered incapable of contributing to the democratic process, presumably for the same reason they were incapable of being doctors or incapable of being scientists, etc.
Yeah.
Her support for the women's political rights led to her active participation in various suffrage organisations. So she worked closely with the Women's Social and Political Union. This was founded by Emmeline Pankhurst,
Yeah.
which, as an organisation, was known for its more militant tactics. Anderson's approach was more moderate, so she was careful not to alienate those who were sort of hesitant to embrace these more radical aspects of the suffrage movement,
Okay.
which you see these days with was it the Stop Oil? What's that organisation
Yeah,
called?
yeah, just stop oil. So we're saying that she was less radical. She was less in your
She was
face
less radical.
about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what did you do? Speeches and
Yeah.
demonstrations or
Speeches, civic engagements, just drawing attention to it in a non-shouting, non-blocking the
disruptive
roads
way?
and disruptive
Yeah.
way, just making arguments in favour of it.
Mm.
But I mean, she was also still running the hospital,
She was a busy bee, to
and
be
she was
honest.
a busy
Like she was
bee.
saving people's
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She not only contributed to the broader suffrage movement, but raised awareness of this interconnectedness of women's health, education, and political rights,
Oh,
and
I
the
really
idea
like
that,
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a rising tide, everything rises with it. And by having
Yes.
more political rights, you then get more political involvement, you get more of a say, you get more lobbying on your behalf for what you need, which then improves the other services, which improves your access to things, which then just so everything rises together.
That
It's,
makes me really happy. And she must have learnt that from somewhere. I wonder
mm,
what influenced her and what, apart from her dad, because her dad sounded like he was really active in her tuition, but she
yeah.
must have pieced together society at some form, or maybe it was just as simple as I've been excluded from this. I want
Hmm.
this. And actually, if I had all these things,
Yeah.
I would be 10 times more productive.
Despite her effort and ability, the exclusion from it just for being a woman,
Yeah.
and also, first-hand experience of women's health because she's a woman,
Yes.
and seeing how poor it all is, and realizing that the only way to get improvement is to be at the table.
Hmm.
Um,
She must have had so much influence. I know I've said it before, but she must have had some real vigor behind her to get
oh
people to
God, yeah,
listen and money, obviously, but to get, because these are actions, not passive. Yeah.
yeah. As life progressed, she married James Anderson,
Okay.
and was mother to two daughters. So her involvement in her medical practice did slow down.
Yep.
She was then a wife and mother as well.
Yep.
And although her sort of ability, her time available to be involved in the medical practice diminished, she remained as determined and committed to medical rights, women's rights, medical reform. She remained active in these women's organisations, continuing to work for the betterment of women's position in society,
Yeah.
all the way through to her retirement. Then in 1902,
Okay.
where she retired to Aldeburgh on the Suffolk coast. So
Lush.
she was 66 at the time of retirement. And what's a sensible thing to do when you retire to a small town on the Suffolk coast? Well, you spend 6 years building up your reputation, and in 1908 she became the town's mayor. And
Yes.
she was
Love
the
this.
uh, thus
I like the
making
idea
her.
that she's just causing havoc in this small Suffolk
Yeah,
town, like
she's
pure havoc.
imagine it as a really sleepy little parish.
Yeah.
Um,
From London, from setting up a brand new hospital in London, and she
yeah.
just storms this little parish. I love it. It's
The hell are
so
you
good.
guys playing at? Okay, someone's got to take control here. Yeah. But that made her the first ever female mayor in England.
Oh, wow.
So she was the first
The
female
first
doctor
of
and the first female
many.
mayor. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't
Um,
know that. That's very cool. I
no, I
wouldn't have
love.
even thought about it, like the first mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when was that? Did you say 1902?
1908, she became
No,
mayor.
oh, because 6 years, yeah,
Yeah.
1908. Hey, which is quite a political position in and itself, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
Like,
it's
if
cool.
that's what she's doing for the suffrage movement, and then, oh, yeah, by the way, I'm mayor. Come on. That's very
That's cool,
cool.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the her achievements and her influence are something we still feel today. So she was an absolute trailblazer, opening the door for these future generations of women to pursue careers in medicine and to become leaders in their communities. She was not only the first woman to qualify as a doctor in the UK, but played a really central role in challenging these societal norms that tended to relegate women to subordinate roles in all aspects of life. She proved that women were indeed capable of achieving excellence in any field they
Yeah.
set their mind to, provided they're given the opportunities to do so. And that sort of goes back to what you were saying earlier, that it's often just the case that people need an opportunity.
Yeah. In
And
that door. Yeah.
yeah, this idea of it, like equality of opportunity is just so important.
And it sounds like she was a good doctor. Like,
Yeah,
it sounds like she provided pretty good care from the vibe that I'm
yeah.
getting. There's no like scandalous stories.
I mean, she had two
It's,
medical degrees, so should have
yeah, she
been.
kind of knew what she was doing. Yeah.
Yeah, her legacy really is a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of challenging the status quo. As the founder of the new hospital for women and a key player in the women's suffrage movement, Anderson's contributions to social reform and gender equality have had a lasting impact on both the medical profession and society at large. She is today remembered as a pioneering physician and a steadfast advocate for women's rights.
Her legacy, I guess, is all the women who came after her, right? That's
Yeah,
her legacy. It's
yeah,
like, oh, by the way, there's hundreds of thousands of us that will,
yeah.
yeah, she opened that door and led the way for others.
And sort
Oh,
of knock the first bricks out of that wall that was
yes.
holding them back. So it's just a little bit easier. And again, as we find in so many of our stories, it's not black or white, but it's just chipping away at those barriers, and it's easier for the next generation and easier for the generation after that. And
Wow. That I didn't know that story, so thank you so much. I can't believe we don't know about her.
yeah,
It-
first Doctor.
yeah, I think you've definitely got room in the curriculum, haven't you, to put her at least alongside Florence Nightingale,
Yeah.
because it sounds like she did so much off her own back, and because a few people let her in, she managed
Hmm.
to change society for so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like
Yeah.
you said, living your values all the way through your life. I love that. Like
It's just
in
stuck to it the
every
whole time.
avenue. Yeah, like whether
Yeah.
it's suffrages, whether it's the Suffolk coastline.
She was consistently herself and she stood by
Yes,
it. And she
true
may
to
not have
yourself.
always had time to take the action that she wanted. She may not have agreed with the methods that other people were
Yeah,
using to go about it, but she believed in that fundamental cause,
and
um,
supported it. Yeah,
and supported it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Throughout her life.
I think we could all do a bit more of that, making sure your values echo through all different parts of your life,
Yeah.
especially today when the word authenticity is just thrown about so much, isn't it? Like I think like it's an overused word.
Well, we seem to be
Like
living in one of the most inauthentic times in history because it's so easy for people to portray
and
a
hide.
curated version of themselves or hide particular aspects.
Yeah,
I've so full disclosure, uh, I'm
your
addicted
name's
to Love
Greg.
Island. Love Island. I,
Nothing wrong with
yeah,
Love Island. Yeah.
it's brilliant. The latest episode is
Is it on now? I thought it was a summer thing.
it's on now. It's Love Island All Stars. So it's
All
people who've been on it
Stars.
before. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I've been on it before.
Yeah, maybe calling them stars is a
Second time
bit of a
lucky.
stretch. Yeah, well, Casey's been on it 3 times now.
Casey.
Um,
Oh, Casey, babe.
one thing that really irritates me about the fellas on there, and
Hmm.
generally they seem like a nice bunch, fine. It really pisses me off that when one of the guys does something sleazy,
Mm.
something bad, lies or
Oh, for
something,
heaven's sake.
whatever
Yeah.
the guy does something wrong, when the other fellas find out about it and they're having a chat together, the guys don't call them out on it. They turn it into a laddish thing. They don't actually say to them, "Yeah, actually, you've been a bit of a dickhead. I think you should apologise for that."
Don't do that.
That's a really disrespectful way to behave,
Mm.
isn't it? And then when they speak to the women in Love Island, when they speak to this lad's partner, they're then buddying up to the woman and saying, "Yeah, it's awful what he did, isn't it? It was really
They're
disrespectful."
not.
So they know that
So they know.
you know whether it's the right or the wrong thing to do, unless you're a
Hmm.
particular kind of sociopath or psychopath. And I'm always really disappointed when men don't call out other men for bad behavior.
It's such an easy
Because,
thing for men to do as well. From
yeah,
it might not feel easy at the time, but in terms of what you can contribute to society, it is minimal. You should be doing it as a bare
yeah.
minimum.
And I
Yeah.
think it's such a powerful, I can have such a powerful impact on whomever you're calling out. So I don't know why they think it's acceptable to really enable someone else to. But anyway, so Love Island, I love it, but it's really winding me up. Um, yeah, yeah, we tend
Yeah.
to have a sort of a binge day where we catch up on a few.
Oh, nice.
When we're
Lovely.
knackered at the end of the week, I think we'll get 2 episodes in
Nice.
tonight.
Nice.
Yeah.
Quite right.
Gonna go down,
Lush.
light the fire, make a bit of dinner,
Oh, yeah.
get ready for Kat to come home and watch some Love Island,
That sounds lovely. We'll
and
have
then
a
go to bed at
fabulous
8 o'clock.
time. Sounds
Yeah.
great. Well, thanks, Simon. Thanks for
Thanks,
teaching
Vicky.
us. That was really interesting and a
Um,
happy story. I like it.
thanks for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, rate, and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Have a look at our Facebook page at She Changed History. It's also our Instagram,
Yep.
where we do little updates, little snippets, little
Yep.
previews.
Yep.
And send us your ideas for any stories, big or small, whether it's changing the history of the world or changing history of just your family life. We'd love to hear about victories, big or small.
Yes. Yes, please. That'd be amazing. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll
Fabulous.
catch you next time.
Thanks. Catch you next time. Bye.